Greetings and welcome to another edition of The Pedal Shift Project. The Pedal Shift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride. Let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are at pedalshift.net/216, and you can email the show pedalshift@pedalshift.net or call the voicemail hotline at 202-930-1109 and check Pedal Shift out on all the socials as well. Hello everybody and welcome to the 216th edition of the Pedal Shift Project. My name's Tim Mooney. Thanks so much for joining on this episode. It is the third part of the 4x44 gap loop, but before we get there, a little bit of housekeeping for you, because we've got some great events coming up in the bikey world. I guess we'll call it that, the bikey world, that I want you to be aware of. The first one is the 18th annual Filmed by Bike extravaganza, and that's happening virtually this year, September 10th through the 13th. I have wanted to check out this film festival for years, but I could never quite coordinate my Portland trips or check out any of the road shows. But this year it's different. I got my tickets the other day and I'm looking forward to it. You can check that all out at filmedbybike.org. Our good friend of the show, Annalisa Vandenberg, is the organizer behind another event that I want you to know about, and that's called the Cycling With Summit. That is also in September. It is September 18th through 20th, so you can do them both just like me. It's a great lineup of speakers, including former Pedal Shift guest and friend of the show, Jasmine Reese. Go check out the lineup. It looks really, really cool. It's at milesofportraits.com/cycling-with. So go check that out. Day 3 of the tour was sneakily the toughest of the 4x44 gap loop. Sure, the hill wasn't as steep as day 1, but this one was the full 44 miles long. Would the heat get the best of me?
From under the bridge downtown in Connellsville, Pennsylvania. I wanted to make that joke for, years. It is the beginning of day 3 of the 4x44 gap loop. I am packed up, ready to go. Today's going to be warm, not going to lie. Getting out a little bit later than I would have liked, but it is what it is. You know, when I'm doing mileage that's this short, I'm realizing that I can really take my time and take breaks. The downside is that the halfway point roughly is Ohiopyle, and if yesterday was any indication, I'm really not going to want to stick around too long in Ohiopyle. I also needed to make sure that I resupplied properly this morning. Last night, I ended up eating everything, so I got more supplies. Basically, I'm all set for lunch, dinner, breakfast for the next 24 hours. Essentially. So I also haven't eaten anything yet, which is probably a terrible idea. So I think I'm going to have to eat something. My body is not tuned to eating breakfast, and it's not good. So I do have some sugary fruit pies. I'll put fruit in quotes. Again, I eat like garbage sometimes on these tours, but I just need to get calories. I am eating a lot of salad. I had 2 full salads last night. We'll have another one tonight. So yeah, I'm definitely getting my vegetables. Don't worry about that. That's what my body is very tuned for. But those will not power me up any hills, and that's what I've got basically for the next day and a half, roughly. Because until I get back to about mile marker 23, 24 or so, it's uphill in some way, shape, or form. So the next little bit here is going to be, it should be cool enough early. I am lucky enough to be under cover for the vast majority of today and really into tomorrow for the most part. The trees do clear away as you get closer to the Eastern Continental Divide, not because it's very high up, it's just how it is. So sun exposure tomorrow, very little today. That said, I am completely covered up. I got my neck gaiter on. I've got my sun sleeves on. The neck gaiter is, of course, as much a mask as anything else for later on. That is sort of where we're at right now. Very crowded camp last night. I was really stunned by the number of people that were there. I've never seen it that full. So is that an indicator? It's another data point. Are people bike touring? The answer is definitively yes. I'm not alone out here by any stretch of the imagination. But last night would indicate to me that there are more people on the trail than normal. But, it's just one night, so it'll be interesting to see. That's such a classic free campground that it does make some sense that it would be a crowded spot. But the shelters were all completely full, and then there were 7 tents on top of that. So that was, and some carrying more than one person. So there were at least 10 people in overflow. I will say I got the impression that at least one of the shelters had folks that were part-time living in it, maybe? I don't know. It was difficult to tell. Interestingly, a police officer came and checked in with them. So I think that what's going on with that is local law enforcement's like, cool, you all are not going to be troublemakers, and you are my eyes and ears on what's going on here. Talked to them for a moment and then left. I thought that was really interesting. That was my perception from afar. But otherwise, it's just a really nice, quiet night. Cicadas notwithstanding. I luckily had my earplugs in. Was really hot, though. I had my fan on me for at least an hour, I would say. And it was no bueno. My inflatable pillow continues to deflate consistently. So that's going to have to get replaced. I should have replaced it before. It's remarkable how different my comfort level is when I've got a pillow versus when I'm using balled up clothing, which is just not a good substitute. So, but the air mattress definitely is in good shape. So that one puncture was the only puncture that I had. So I'm very grateful that that's been working out. So yeah, I think Husky Haven's my destination for tonight, if only because I get access to a shower, which I didn't have last night, and at least brief Wi-Fi to check in with home, because today, there's just not going to be a lot of contact. And since I'm leaving early, it seems like Kimberly is not up and at 'em yet, which is fine. But I may not get in touch with her more than a text in Ohio pile otherwise. So I think I'm going to be leaning towards Husky Haven again rather than do a wild camp. Just the extra shower after 2 days without one in this heat seems to be the right move. Trying to think anything else. I am going with electrolyte drink today, unlike yesterday. And I'll drink an entire one through the day as I dilute it with water. So that'll be within probably about 2 liters worth of water, I would say roughly. Maybe just a liter. I'd have to think here. I guess I have a liter of it, plus I have some more. So I guess I'm taking one full bottle. I don't know how much is in it. It might be a liter, and doing it 2 to 1 roughly, which is what I like. And of course, grape, because that's the only good flavor. Not true, but I like to say that. All right, day 3, let's get rolling. From about mile marker, we'll call it probably 80. We'll call it 80. I'll probably pass it as I were right here. We are nearly a quarter done with the mileage on day 3. And I think, remember how I said I was agnostic about which direction is which? Man, I'll tell you what, this is a funny slog going this direction. It's a noticeable incline. It's not as much of an incline, clearly, as the one coming from Cumberland, but on a wet day, which I so frequently had going this way, I can understand why I was like, worst decision ever. So, but at the same time, on a nice day like this, it's really so manageable. I think everyone's got their preferences about how to ride and whatever. The thing that I've really enjoyed about today is, man, I am just not in a rush. And so more often than not, I've been just sort of like, hey, slow down. There's no way that you're not getting to the campsite anything but too early, if anything. But it's luckily stayed reasonably cool here. And as I've been going up in elevation, I think it's maintained that. Now, ask me again in a couple of hours. I suspect it won't be as comfortable, but shouts to my arm coolers, the sun sleeves. Boy, on a day like today, They are, especially when you first get rolling. There's some any moisture on it catches that little bit of the, I think it's called the prevailing wind that comes at you. If it's not the prevailing wind, it's something else. You know, when you're riding, how you have wind in your face, even if it's completely still air otherwise. Well, that hits your arms and it just cools you right off. And I really appreciate that. I forgot last night when I was hot, I forgot that sitting in a bin at home in DC is one of those cooling towels, those that are activated. It's evaporative cooling, same concept as the sun sleeves here. But I remember that worked pretty well last summer, and I regret not having it for this trip. I think I would have been a little more comfortable last night. I also was reflecting a little bit about last night, why it was so warm. I think part of it also was being in that Adirondack shelter. You know, you're sort of enclosed on three sides. And so I think any breeze that there was, and I'm not sure there was much of one, you know, even with my tent being that no-seam mesh for the most part, you know, there was very little air movement so using the fan was necessary to create that. Morning. But the one thing that I did avoid this morning was the dew. It was very dewy outside on the grass, so I know the tent would have been packed up a little bit wet, unless I just would have relaxed and let it dry out a little bit. But I don't know. I kind of like the shelters for the additional level of privacy it gives you, maybe a little bit extra space in some ways. I do appreciate them. Those are a fantastic piece of the Great Allegheny Passage that the C&O does not have. It's interesting because I think the C&O could benefit from them, especially for bad weather days. But I mean, that's a Park Service call. Clearly hasn't been added. That was mile marker 79 I just passed. So yeah, officially 10 miles in from where I started. So not quite a quarter of the way. We're going 45 today technically. So 11 and a quarter. So yeah, slow and steady wins the race today. Even though I'm not racing. Let's see. Oh, eating. So I did stop at the sheepskin trailhead several miles back and had a bit to eat and hydrated. And just now I've had peanut butter crackers pack, which I think will be helpful for balancing out the acidity of the even the watered down Gatorade feels a little acidic to me, especially on an empty stomach or a near empty stomach, or an empty stomach or a stomach that's mostly full of sugar. So I feel like I'm giving myself the calories that I needed, gave myself the caffeine that I prefer early. I guess that's one thing that I have not been doing as of late on the tours, and that is even on the longer-ish rides. I've not been supplementing with caffeine as a kind of performance booster, mostly just to make it easier to go to sleep later in the day. I probably would if I was doing more miles, but I have not been doing really much more than these mid-40s this season, which has been fine. I think that if I was trying to cover, notice a little downhill there, cover some more territory, I certainly would be doing higher mileage days. And probably then utilizing the caffeine a little bit more. It's really interesting how well that works. And I mean, it's evidenced by the fact that so many of the sort of performance gels and goos will also contain caffeine. So, science. I would estimate that I've gone up maybe a couple 100 feet, give or take. Could probably check my phone or my watch to confirm that, because I was right on the river line. So I'm going to assume that was at elevation 0 in Connellsville, although maybe I shouldn't assume that. But I think relative to the river, I've gone up a couple hundred feet just looking down over the course of the last 10 miles. So, I mean, you can do the math on that. Just say, all right, not a huge incline, but, again, it's a consistent grade. So, my spin, there's very little to no opportunities to coast, which is why yesterday's mileage was so easy in comparison. I mean, it's not like you could coast all the way from 44 to 88 by any stretch of the imagination, but the amount of energy that you have to put in is dramatically lower compared to this direction. Even though with good gearing, even a heavily loaded bike like I got right now is, I won't say effortless, but it's certainly not, I am not huffing and puffing. This is not climbing into the Rockies or anything like that, like so many of you have done. My relationship with climbing over the years has really changed. If you were with the show way back when, it was very much in my head looking at the profiles of hills because I struggled so much early on with them because I didn't have the right gearing on my bike. And it's funny because that seems to contradict what I've said in the past about, hey, if you're a beginner, go with the bike that you've got. And that's still true, I think. But when you are tackling tougher terrain on a bike that doesn't have good climbing gears, that you're going to struggle. And that's what I had early on. But then I learned a little bit more, and then hills became more like, all right, this is something I have to get through. And conquering them feels better than struggling with them. So, just that kind of shift in your mindset. And then, of course, when you're on the other side of it, very typically you get a nice downhill, or at least a partial downhill that you're rewarded with. So that's what today all day is. And tomorrow, for a good chunk of the day, at least half of the day, as I mentioned before, is because I've got basically a full coast, if I want, all the way down from essentially the Eastern Continental Divide through to a couple of miles outside of Cumberland, and then it flattens out some, and you do need to pedal a little bit more. But typically, like I recommend for most people who are doing downhills, just to keep your muscles warm, you do want to kind of spin a little bit into it, unless you're truly on a big hill and you're topping 35 or even 40 miles per hour. I mean, then maybe not. But it is something to bear in mind that you do want to keep the muscles going, especially on a colder day, which is not what I've got today. So lots of deer. I'm just seeing one peek out right now. I mean, I've lost track of how many deer I've seen. I have to wonder, and I think I've wondered this out loud in previous tour journals, how much the wildlife has changed in various areas because of the change in traffic, basically. I mean, this deer's letting me get right up on top of her here at mile marker 78. I mean, hello, I'm 10 feet. Now she's going. You might have even been able to hear that. I don't think I've gotten that close to a deer in a long time on a bike, especially while I was yakking. Anyways, mile marker 78, good time to quit. Hello from Ohio Pile. Ohio Pile, Pennsylvania is a much less crowded Ohio Pile on Sunday at the same time, 11 a.m.-ish, compared to Ohio Pile, Pennsylvania on Saturday at 11 a.m.-ish, when it was literally terrifying. Like, it was way too densely packed. It is really interesting, my point of view, how much more phobic, for lack of a better word, I am to being in crowds of people. It was pretty stunning how I felt yesterday versus today. Today it seemed really good. I contemplated going down to the river. There was actually space where I could feel like I could get down there, but then I thought, I just don't want to lock up my bike. I don't want to push it out of the way.
it didn't appeal to me. It is so nice and cool underneath the trees in the green tunnel that I thought, why don't I just push into there and then have my lunch? And that's what I just did. So it was all good. I'm a little less than halfway, I think, to the end of my day. I've got Confluence to go through here, to kind of check in with home and all of that other kind of stuff, just to kind of take it slow today. I don't think I'm in a rush at all. I would say the number of trail users is substantially lower today. I don't know if Sunday's just a lower travel day compared to Saturday. I mean, it seems like it right now, and I don't remember if I've been gone through Ohio Pile on Sundays or weekdays or whatever in past, but it was quite a bit more. Even though I definitely, the year I lost my phone, I remember it was pretty crowded, and maybe I just am more hyper vigilant to that now. I'm feeling pretty fueled up and cooled down again, hydrated, etc. I don't think it's as hot as it was yesterday, so we'll see how this goes. Again, going to take this pretty slow, and next stop will be Confluence, Pennsylvania. About mile marker 65 or so, just shy of that actually. I am not too far from beautiful Confluence, Pennsylvania. But most importantly, I just, for the first time, did a little dunk, a baptism, if you will, in the Castleman River. There is a great bit of river access for a fairly steep embankment near a sign of note about river otter restoration, which was actually an interesting read. But I was feeling a little slow and sluggish, feeling a little hot, thought I should hydrate some more. And I was like, wait a second, there's a river access. So I bopped down there, got a nice picture of my feet in the water, and did a little bit of head dousing and arm or sun sleeve drenching, and even for the first time had to use the water ejection function of my watch, which I'm not sure it really needed, but I did it anyways, because why not? So yeah, that was refreshing AF, because now I feel much cooler, and I didn't spend a lot of time there. Unfortunately, I probably would have spent half hour or even an hour there potentially, because there was some shade and some sun. Could have dried out a few things of note that needed drying. But unfortunately, some other folks had the same idea. Totally fine for them to do that. I just was kind of hoping, wouldn't it be neat if I had a little time down by the river by myself, but not so much. So let's see, we are now just passing mile marker 65. So that's about 3 miles into Confluence. And I'm toying with the idea of spending a little time in Confluence, it being barely 12:30. Either barely 12:30 right now. There's still, let's see, from Confluence, figure that's a 2-hour ride up without any breaks, which, who knows. So, you're getting to the point where it's like, that's 3 o'clock. So, it's a little on the early side. So I've got plenty of time to play with. If there was nobody there on Friday night, I'm thinking, I shouldn't say nobody, if there were very few people there on Friday night, I am dead fire certain that Sunday night is even less likely to be risking a whole bunch of people. And my other hope is that it'd be nice if there were an opportunity to utilize their outdoor deck there. Unfortunately, it was being used by the folks who had rented the house last time. But if I could get my shower in after checking in and hop on social for a little while, respond to some of the comments. I have been responding. I try to, not in real time, but I try to keep on top of it. Facebook's the harder one for me. As many of you know,
I threatened to give it up altogether, and what I ended up doing was I deleted my original account, but not before creating a brand new version of me. And the only thing I do on Facebook now is pedal shift stuff. So consequently, I don't have it on my phone. And maybe I should put the app back on my phone for a minute. But the web interface works just fine. So in any event, that's the one that's always the latest of the game on. I'm usually first to reply on Instagram or Twitter, but I do want to try to honor the folks who are taking the time to say something on Facebook as well. So, but another just stunning day to be out on the water. Oh, by the way, the Castleman River is classically cold water. Even though it's quite shallow in that area, even this deep into the month of August, I was surprised. It felt as cold as some of the rivers in the Northwest can be, which was a real surprise because those are fed by glaciers all summer long, glacial melt and snowpack melt, and the snow's long gone in this part of the country. So I was actually fairly impressed with how not cool, but cold it was, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. I wish I had a little more time, and that leads me to what I was talking about earlier, which is to say, maybe I should spend some time in Confluence and figure out a spot by the river there. Confluence, of course, is named for the confluence with the Castleman and there's another river. I don't know which one it is. I will figure that out. But in any event, that's sort of the next stop. So, more to come. From outside of Confluence, Pennsylvania, at precisely mile marker 61, we're on the last, let's get this right, 17 miles or so? Yeah, 17 miles until we hit mile marker 44, ending day 3. So this next stretch is going to be very, very quiet. And I don't know how much river access I'm going to be able to get, but I'm kind of hoping that I'll be able to get it again. Man, that was just really nice to have. And I was able to get down again towards the river, although I didn't kind of dunk myself in it, because it's just... the river here in Confluence, it's just there's a dam and there's just more stuff around here, so I just don't know what the water quality is like comparatively. I'm sure it's fine. There were certainly people recreating in it, but I'd like to know what I'm getting myself into if I'm going to get into direct contact. There's tons of anglers around here. I know that it's a very big deal. You may be able to hear in the background, there's a ton of bikers out today in this area. I don't know if it's just, hey, this is where folks come on a regular weekend, but it seems to be a thing. I always find it interesting interacting with them when they see me on a bike. I was nearby. Nobody made any comments, so I don't know. In any event, I am happily caloried up, fed, cooled down a little bit. And I got, like I said, 17 more miles to go, which you have to figure with a grade is probably about 2 hours. And I think I've mentioned that before, so forgive the repetition on all of that. Confluence is an interesting town. I used to spend more time in it than I have recently. There's a campground here, as I've mentioned. There are stores that are varyingly open and closed. There's the Outflow Freeze, the kind of hamburger / ice cream place, which I actually went and took a look, and it is open. Does seem to have quite the crowd going there. So but not in an unreasonable way. So they're open. That's usually the closest place to get a bite to eat. That's easy if you're staying at the campground. There's a fancier restaurant kind of equidistant on the other side of the river, which I've never been to because I'm always perfectly happy with like a hamburger stand kind of a meal after a long day of riding. But not to be today. So I am ready to roll. I don't, like I said, I'm not in a rush right now. Time check right now, it's not quite 1:30. So you figure if I rolled there immediately, it would be somewhere around 3:30, I'm thinking. So really zero need to rush. to get there. I think last time I might have interrupted the folks' dinner, and it was closer to 6 o'clock. So maybe going earlier would be better. All right, let's get rolling. Day 3 is a-wasting. From a hammock in beautiful Rockwood, Pennsylvania, it's the end of day 3 of Pedal Shift Tour Journal's 4x44 Gap Loop. And I have been literally napping here in this hammock for the last, hour or so. I ate dinner. I was starving. Got checked in. Briefly considered staying in the guest house, but it wasn't available. So I stopped briefly considering it and I went directly back to the same campsite I had the last time because I knew I could hang the hammock. There were 2 great trees for it. Ate dinner. Been taking a nap, drank the final 2 beers that were marginally cool enough to be able to drink, and just really have been kind of relaxing, listening to some music, listening to my Chuck Klosterman book, which has been super weird and super good, a series of short stories. If you like Klosterman, I think you'd like it. If this is your first introduction, I would recommend maybe one of his earlier collections. I think they're a little more accessible. But anyways, bike performed great on this trip. I'll definitely give it a good clean, get the grit out, and lube up the chain when I get back. The tent is sitting in my bag still. I have not done a damn thing with it yet. I should probably set it up. I've got a couple hours, roughly. No, a little less than that, until sun goes down, so I'll probably want to do that ahead of time. Feels much cooler, and I'm sure part of it is just that I showered and I got my feet up, and I haven't been moving constantly, but I do think there's a little bit of a breeze, and I think while it was 86, they had a thermometer at the check-in at the house there. It's nowhere near that right now, which is good, but I'm hoping for a cooler night and an easier night's sleep than last night, which would make sense. I'm a little more at an elevation, and I think it'll be better. Tomorrow, I have not a lot of water with me. Now, I can go back to the guest house and fill up there. I might do that, but I'm also an hour's ride to Meyersdale, and I know the water's on there. So if I've got enough water after all this done, I think I've got another liter left. I think that should probably be enough. I'm not planning on cameling up tonight because that's just not going to make a lot of sense. But I've gone through my kind of post-dinner, about a half a liter here. I think I want to have at least a half liter tomorrow morning. I do have my coffee, so that there's probably a half liter of liquid that I'm going to be imbibing then. So I don't know. It's probably close. I'll assess in the morning. I tend to drink a lot less water at the beginning of the day than in the middle and end of the day. So chances are I can get to Meyersdale and still have water in my bottle, which is all that really matters, right? So I'll fill up there. I have plenty of food, just a limited variety of food left, but a lot of kind of snack food and like mini bagels and cream cheese, which I'll definitely need to eat on the earlier side. So that's sort of the food for the beginning of the day. I don't love the food options between here and Cumberland. Really, Meyersdale's the only real decent option. Frostburg's there, but boy, it's a slog to get up there. So, as I mentioned, I'm sure on day 1. So, I think my intention is to just basically go with what I've got and eat through that. Frankly, it's food that I'm not going to eat when I'm done off the bike anyway, so I may as well just motor through that and enjoy that for the rest of the day. Tomorrow, I have a short, 44 miles, same as before, but a good chunk of it, the last half of it, roughly, is going to go pretty quickly because it's that big downhill, which was the big uphill on day 1. So my day is potentially going to be quite short to get to Cumberland. So I don't know what I'm going to do. My pickup is not going to be until the mid-evening.
So I think I'm going to figure out what I want to do once I get into town. There's, obviously I could up my contact possibility and, go to a cafe or something like that. Or I could go someplace where I can find a reasonable Wi-Fi signal. And, there are things that I can do to kind of, while the hour's away. One other thought that I had was that I would ride to the first campsite on the C&O and hang out there. Obviously, there's a picnic table. I'll have a good Wi-Fi signal. I can watch the trains if I want to. So, there's certainly options. Listen to some music, read books, listen to podcasts. I got lots of options. It's good to have a vacation day. That's all I have to say. So, I'm going to play that by ear. I think that, again, I've enjoyed myself a lot more when I've been in situations away from people and away from towns, in a way that maybe is a little surprising even to me. And I'm sure that is super Corona related. I think that I've just gotten used to having that separation. And I was talking to Kimberly, my partner, the other day going, man, there's going to come a point in time when we're going to have our first meeting or, hang out with a group of people, and it's probably going to be family, but who knows, and it's going to be safe, and we're going to be good with it, and everybody's going to feel safe, but it's going to feel super weird. And I'm just wondering when that's going to be. Who knows? But as I lie here on the hammock, I know that I'm making the best of things as it is, and I'm very grateful that I can continue the adventures in a truncated kind of way. But, I wonder if any tour of the Gap would have been substantially different without all of this. Maybe it would have been pretty close to the same. Who knows? All I know is that I've been enjoying this quite a bit, and this has turned out to be as fun as I envisioned it. And I kind of like the 44 miles a day kind of thing. It's gimmicky and fun, and we all know how much I like gimmicky and fun. Anyways, that's the end of day 3. Thank you for joining. One more day left on the 4x44. Statistics. Miles biked 44, go orange. Food resupplies 1. Minutes spent with 2 feet in the Castleman River 20. Rattlesnakes 0. Less crowded Ohio piles 1. Arguably semi-chilly beverages at camp earned 2. Flats 0. And as always, we like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedal Shift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedal Shift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows and covering new tours like the Kessel Run. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot and annual options. If you're not into the small monthly thing, check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lien, Andrew MacGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittus, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrance Manson, Harry Telgadas, Chris Barron, Mark Van Raam, Brad Hipwell, Stuart Buchan, Mr. T, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LoGreco, Cody Floerchinger, Tom Benenati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollack, Joseph Quinn, Byron Paterson, Joachim Robber, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Henkel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Avilés-Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Dan Gebhardt, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemas, Connie Moore, William Gothman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Latois Lopez, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, John Funk, Tom Bilch, Ronald Piroli, Dave Roll, Brian Hafner, Misha LeBlanc, Ari Messenger, David Grotke, Wally Estrella, Sue Reinert, John Letko, Stephen Granada, Philip Mueller, Robert Lackey, Dominic Carroll, Jackie McCulloch, John Hickman, Jack Smith, Carl Presso, David Neves, Patty Louise, Terry Fitzgerald, Peter Steinmetz, Timothy Fitzpatrick, Dave Fletcher, James Stratakis, David Neves, Mike Lazewski, and thanks also to all past and anonymous members for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedal Shift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedal Shift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.